Aqui a Home Office 5521 will take a look very fast. As you can observe, we have some, drivers, research how a light bulb may be, with cell phones and connection and a lot of things. And if you have a company with problems and those problems kind of affecting others' interests, maybe others' interests affected can request information about this. If it's an American interest and have the tranquility, stability, and peace, and confirm premises at the US preamble, you will use the US preamble as the argument that will be presented by your embassy, for instance, in Brazil. And the company will have a board member or maybe the leadership, the CEO, in a flight and before inside the embassy to get the ticket to be inside the flight that is paid by the anti-crime budget. We are not considering have the payment as flight ticket by any government because we are preventing risks as pricing scams, and all governments on present time are involved at the pandemic event, especially those with tax stimulus and transference of money, which is economic empowerment for specific groups. We are kind of working this situation when you didn't believe you will be without surprise when you got, in a situation uncomfortable. Corruption, criminal association by nepotism and advantage as expectation even before the the electoral period, and this going in having the interconnection by system globally speaking. We have transnational organized crime from failures and having advantage as white collar crime, pure activity, sometimes tax evasion by do not have the payment or have the payment but the public department has overpriced contract and then the P receive the money overestimated and have the evasion. And you have compensations and gains by adjustment exchange rated. Some central banks are involved by silence. And as we told that the blog risk report risk report 2022 trace march.blogspot.com, even after the regression you are all guilty because this is an external procedure as control, review, and analysis made as independent research and linked with no one to have this kind of thing. And we will have on mind that this both as a procedure, as you can observe, against clandestine organization sponsored by public departments which offer or lead prevention of consequence or do not have the proper application of the law against organized groups or interests or even result protecting criminals by misusage of prerogative and scapegoat things against regular people and regular companies. We could have the model yesterday, and it was like this. I have my department or my office, public or corporate, which is presented as something at the same structural design of my company or my public service as a square. My company is ruled by the statement according with the constitution. My public department is ruled by law according with the constitution. We have a conformance in a very specific moment. We do not have this conformance anymore at the public department by activism and inside the company by wrongdoings. And of course that you will have a result that it's not a square, and then we will be and have the continuity as internal failure and the concurrent interests of the internal failure in multiples department. Indeed is something name it collinearity, and the collinearity by failure bring ourselves to an organization considering patterns as clandestine movement or logical gaps at the statement, which implies communication, and my financial records if has a failure, and I can have the transparency as company implies that someone is having or taking advantage of my structure as public and corporate. These two both are physiological premises of organization, which indeed goes inside my company. If I do nothing, I will have a disruptive event, and then I will have something new formed by the adverted, and the adverted took it from my company. And if it's a company, will imply the interests of my clients and customers that got hurt. For instance, at this case, considering the image that you had from my window. And the broken window of the company as a single department or office brings ourselves to a conjunctural failure as integration of all failure inside the public department. In Brazil have this as geopolitical distribution of criminal and illicit empowerment by Article 74 and 23 Item 1 of the Brazilian Constitution, acting by free will Article 1 Item 4, observing the premises inside the global community, Article 4 Item 9, development of mankind. But if you are having 1 up to 107 nations, and indeed we have immigrants as 198, and transnational organized crime as 199, and the 200 as the sponsorship, as the steering committee, which must be the sponsorship as legal accomplishment, at least request and pressure to have, and do the pressure to have this exposing those areas, as you can observe, which goes inside institutions that has tolerance with failures from the top, because in general the top level is a level doing signatures and contracts by the use of budget and saving accounts. And the integration of them all brings ourselves to threats against mankind, considering elements on food and drug administration, weapons of mass destruction, even hidden inside the financial system that has failures, and the continuity of transference of economic empowerment, organizing the pandemic and criminal organization from microeconomy. And we will observe that maybe, as you can have the values oriented to be tracked and traced from buildings that do signatures, especially on public budget, by specific chairs on specific offices, have the hearing procedure of them by international institutions, organizations, and organisms, like you have some, by and always with elements with special types of legitimacy in cases of immediately responsiveness against threats that affect mankind and others. Then we will check that this kind of will bring ourselves to a disruptive event. And then we will have the regression of two sides by the corrupted area in the middle. The criminal area, indeed, they are outlawed, but considering that this criminal area is inside the regular area, they will be eliminated. And the regular area indeed is guilty by the silence. This is an external control. But considering that some will kind of offer, they will probably do not have the serious and strictly punishment, because sometimes they are in silence by oppression. And for instance, if you are inside the public department, everybody is involved with the criminal activity. You didn't give up. You had to be there to pay your bills, have food in your to your family, but you cooperate. It means that when you do the regression by the motivation as criminal, considering the corruption inside the department, you probably will be guilty by silence, but not suffering the guiltiness as punishment. You will have an advice or something, very symbolic, I would say. But the others maybe will be in a serious problem. Then this will create a disruptive event, and this event, as disruptive event, will allow to put variables as criminal motivation by corruption inside public departments from the top, have the continuity and the domain of circumstances inside the both, and we can have the division, for instance, that the boat has three levels. The first level, North America; the second level, South America; the third level, Europe. To do not mix the criminals and the mafia groups and organized crime groups that goes on South America, considering the drug cartel, the groups on Europe and North America. And one more time, we will have that the new mafia as mobilization of criminal motivation and purpose by corruption on regular area will impact the regular area, taking the integrity, especially by activism and arguments that you push the limits of the law and the constitution, and in many moments not respecting even other constitution by the integration and interaction that we got. And in the same way, the criminal activities that in general they do not have the law and the constitution, they do things by their own regulatory premise and then trust in the words they have. And they will, and you shouldn't be naive and consider the criminal something that you must and can trust. But they will be affected in the same way, as you could observe when we did the presentation with circles. If we have the circle as criminal activity and we have a traced circle inside, indeed the projection will give you a circle bigger but with no integrity, and then your criminal information can be dripped from inside your organization to the outside by the association with an area that must do things according with the law. You know the problems on your area as criminal activity. If they didn't have the time to come to the legal side, because there are no guarantees as criminal in the way they are at the legal side, you probably will reduce the size of your criminal organization. For instance, it will be a pandemic event anymore, but will be kind of a small cell as local crime, with no broken wind. But this is a choice up to you, my friend, not mine. Have a nice weekend.